The current Ebola outbreak, also known as the Ebola hemorrhagic fever, is the most recent epidemic in the medical world and is believed to have been introduced by a single person becoming infected by a bat. Another person can become infected with the disease by coming into contact with an infected person's blood or body fluids that has Ebola or coming into contact with an infected animal. Symptoms seen to identify Ebola are fever, severe headache, muscle pain, weakness, fatigue, diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and unexplained hemorrhage. However, it's a challenge to identify Ebola because the early symptoms are related to other common diseases such as malaria and typhoid fever. To prevent contracting Ebola, according to Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, people should practice careful hygiene. For example, wash your hands with soap and water or an alcohol-based hand sanitizer and avoid contact with blood and body fluids. Do not handle items that may have come in contact with an infected person's blood or body fluids, such as clothes, bedding, needles, and medical equipment. Avoid funeral or burial rituals that require handling the body of someone who has died from Ebola. Avoid contact with bats and non-human primates or blood, fluids, and raw meat prepared from these animals. Avoid facilities in West Africa where Ebola patients are being treated. The U.S. Embassy or consulate is often able to provide advice on facilities. After you return, monitor your health for 21 days and seek medical care immediately if you develop symptoms of Ebola. With me now is Dylan Lincoln, an engineer with the idea of a device which detects Ebola. Welcome.
Good to be here.
So you say there's a product out there which can detect Ebola. What caused you to come up with this idea and how does it work?
My group actually came up with this idea when we looked at the problem of Ebola, seeing how much of an impact it made to countries all over the world. In that moment, we decided to come up with a product to detect Ebola. The eBinky is an electronic waterproof pacifier that detects the first signs of Ebola powered by thermal energy, converting the child's heat to energy. As of now, it consists of a temperature sensor and saliva analyzer nestled in the silicone nipple, and an external Ebola virus detector that displays the information recorded from the pacifier. When it uses a Bluetooth chip to send information to the nearest hospital or clinic with the serial number of the eBinky, this tells the doctors whether or not an individual has Ebola or not.
But why a pacifier? What went through your group's mind when creating the eBinky?
We chose a pacifier because not only adults are contracting Ebola, but children and infants as well. According to SaveTheChildren.org, 22% of Ebola patients in Liberia are children. This struck the idea of the eBinky.
How can our listeners be connected and support the eBinky?
You can follow us on Twitter at Ebola Binky and pick up an eBinky at your local hospital or clinic.
The Ebola Binky, a pacifier that detects Ebola symptoms and could change the outlook on the spreading of Ebola. Thank you for coming, Dylan.
Thank you for having me.